Hey crafty fam, it's Alex Vanover and welcome back to my craft room. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you something that can help you organize your craft space and your life. I'm going to show you how to make your very own clear print and cut labels. So let's get into it. So as I'm sure that you can guess, anytime that you're working with clear sticker paper or any type of sticker paper, there are a ton of different projects that you can do with them. In this case, I'm going to show you how I'm going to make some labels for some clear acrylic bins that I have in my craft room. But you could apply these same principles to images. You could just make stickers that you want to use in your planner or all different kinds of things. So feel free to apply some of these skills to any type of project that you want to do with clear sticker paper. But the way that I like to make labels is I try to be as efficient as possible. So I try to set up the first one the way that I want it and then duplicate it the rest of the time so that I can get all the labels that I need. So the first thing I need to do is insert a text box into my Design Space canvas and type out the first label that I want to make. So I'm going to make some blanks, or excuse me, I'm going to make some labels for my sublimation blanks. So I'm going to type that out, and then we're going to do a little bit of formatting here. The first thing I'm going to do is change the font. So I'm going to go under the font dropdown and choose System Fonts. And if you guys have been around for a while, you've heard me talk about the font Avocado Creamy. I love this font, but because of these little funky R's and with some of these letters, it can be a little bit of a pain to weed if you're doing it really small. But because I don't have to weed this, I'm even more excited to use this font. So once I have the font changed, then of course I need to size it. So my bins are about 5 inches wide on the side that I'm labeling. So I want to make my labels about, let's say about 3 inches wide. Actually, I might even make them 3.25 inches wide. So that's going to be the standard size that I'm going to keep for all of them. So next I need to go ahead and change the color of my label. And I want to keep these nice and dark because the sticker paper is clear, of course. You have to be careful not to use super light colors because there's a chance you may not be able to see them. And also as a reminder, your printer doesn't have white ink. So we can't do something like a white offset because we won't be able to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to Operation with my text selected, choose this little box, and then change it to black. So once my first label is formatted, now I have it the way that I like it. Now I'm going to set up all the other text boxes for all the other labels that I want to create. So in order to keep them the same, I'm just going to keep this selected and then go over to my layers panel. And here at the top, I'm going to choose duplicate. I'm going to have 2 labels for sublimation blanks. So I'll leave this one the same and then I'll duplicate 1 extra and call this one sublimation ink. Then I'll duplicate it again and call the next one sublimation supplies. Duplicate again, and we'll call this one, so this one's going to be 2 lines. So it's going to be a little bit longer. It's going to be infusible ink, pens, and markers. Then I'm going to have to do a little bit of formatting with this one, of course. I'm going to go to alignment here at the top in the edit bar and choose center. And then I don't want quite as much space between these lines. So with this selected, I'm going to go to line space. And usually you can use the arrows to bump it very slowly. But I usually like to type in my spacing because I find that it goes really slow if you use these arrows. So I'm going to do -3 and see where that brings me. See, that was quite a jump and it really didn't make too much of a difference. So actually, I think that looks pretty good. So the reason that we have to add a shape behind these labels is because I don't want my Cricut to individually cut out each of these letters. That would take forever and that would kind of defeat the process of using clear sticker paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach each of these to a shape. That way it will print out the center and then it will cut around the shape. So first I need to insert a shape by going to the design panel and choosing shapes. And then inserting, I like to do like this rounded corner square. It really doesn't matter because it's going to be clear, but I just think the rounded corners are a little classy for labels. And then what I'm going to do is see how it's going to be over top all of my words because it's on the top on the layers panel. I can either take this layer and drag it all the way to the bottom, or I can right click and choose send to back. And that way it's going to be behind all of my wording. Then I'm going to unclick the lock in the lower left-hand corner and then use the double-ended arrows to make this the right size for my label. So I really could have made my words a little bit bigger for the size of the label, but because I know that the shape is going to add a little bit of space, it's going to be closer to like 3.5, I didn't want my words to be any larger so that I didn't run into going too close to the sides of the bin. So once I think it looks good, actually, I'm going to go ahead and select my shape and then change the color to white so it's easier to see. Then something else I'm going to do is click and hold my mouse down and draw a box around both shapes to select them at the same time. And under align, I'm going to choose center so that everything is perfectly centered. We were pretty close anyway. But before I flatten this, I'll explain that here in just a second. First, I need to select my shape and then I need to duplicate it so that I have several more for the other shapes. So I'll just keep duplicating until I have enough for everything. Okay, so now let's talk about flatten. Whenever you use the flatten function in Cricut Design Space, that's pretty much going to be used exclusively for print then cut. And when you flatten something, that means that we are going to flatten this text onto this box, and it's going to allow the center to print and the background to cut around the outside of the shape. So this is how you would cut like a circle sticker or even a rectangle sticker, a square sticker, anything like that. So flatten is the function you would use if you wanted to make like a round sticker with text or an image in the middle, or even a square or rectangular sticker. You want to remember to use the flatten function. So again, I'm just going to click and drag a box around both to select them. And then down here in the actions panel, I'm going to choose flatten. And you'll see at the top of the layer, it says flatten because they are kind of stuck together. So it's kind of similar to attach, but if you attach, then it's not going to print the middle and cut around the outside. It would actually cut every single cut line, including all of the text. So that's why it's important to use flatten. So now I'm just going to follow the same process for all the other labels that I have. Okay, so once all of your labels are flattened to the shape that you want them to cut out, then I want to do one more step before we move on to the next screen. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your own cut setting for your Cricut to cut out these clear glossy labels. But before you cut the entire sheet, I want you to do a test cut. So in order to do a test cut, we have to have an additional shape or something we can practice with. So that's what we're going to insert into our canvas now. So we're going to go over to the design panel and click on the basic shapes. And whenever I do a test cut, I pretty much always choose a star. And the reason I like to choose a star is because it has all of these corners. So if the cut setting is going to snag or if it's not going to cut all the way through, I just feel like I would know better if I'm using a star versus a simpler shape. So that's just my personal preference. Next, I need to have the star selected, go up to the edit bar and make my star just 1 inch wide. We don't need to have a super big shape in order to test out the cut setting, just enough to double check and see. Another thing that's important about a test cut is that it needs to be on a mat all by itself. So this one is like that default dark gray that Design Space makes your images. So I can even change it to something like a light blue, just so that I know it's not going to be on the same mat as my other items. Another piece of advice that I have for you, if this is your first time cutting this material and you're going to be doing a test cut, is that I don't recommend you fill up the entire sheet. Usually when you watch my print and cut tutorials, I add other items into my sheet because I want to be sure to use the entire sheet and not waste any room. But in this case, if this is the first time, I'm going to be using the bottom of the same sheet to do a test cut so that I'm not wasting any extra material, which is why I'm only doing a handful of labels that are just going to take up the top of the sheet so I can use the bottom for my test cuts. So those are just a couple of pro tips for you for the way that I would handle this project after testing it out and trying it myself. But if you need more help or a more in-depth explanation of print and cut, I will link my basic print and cut tutorial up here in the corner of the screen so that you can get some extra help and get all the steps explained to you in a super slow and steady pace. I am making this tutorial assuming that you have already watched that or you have experience with print and cut, so keep that in mind. Once you have all your labels in place and your test cut shape is ready to go, you can click the green Make It button. Then because I'm working with a 3rd generation machine, this question is asking me whether I'm working without a mat for smart materials or on a mat for everything else. So I'm going to choose on a mat and then choose continue. Now in the prep screen, I don't need to make any changes. I just do need to double check that my test cut shape is on a different mat from the rest of my print and cut. So now we're good to go. So next you can click the green continue button to take you to the materials selection screen. So initially when I get into the materials selection screen, the first mat that's going to be chosen is probably just the test cut mat. But in order to select the print and cut mat first, I'll just click it to select it. You'll see it's like a lighter gray than the rest of it. That's how I know it's selected. And the first thing I want to do is print out my labels and give them some time to dry because after you print out the glossy sticker paper, if you touch it immediately, then the ink will smear. So you're going to need to give it like 25 or 30 minutes at least before you actually print them out. So that's why I like to go ahead and print first, and then we'll deal with the test cut and the cut settings. So I'm going to start by clicking the green Send to Printer button, and that way I can choose some settings for my print. Now, the first thing I want to do is turn off the bleed. And the reason I'm turning off the bleed is because I already have an initial shape going off all the way around my words. If you were cutting very close to your words or very close to your image, I always recommend that you leave the bleed on. Then in order to access more specialized settings, you want to check the Use System Dialog button and then choose the green Print button. But don't worry, we're not printing just yet. When we select this button, then you'll see the print dialog box open and we can choose some more specialized settings. So first I'm going to go over and select my Epson EcoTank 2760, which is what I'm using these days for print and cut projects. Then I'm going to choose Preferences. And for the paper type, after some experimenting, I have found that for my printer, the premium photo paper glossy works a lot better than the ultra premium photo paper glossy. So I definitely recommend that you do some experimentation with that and see what works best for the printer that you're using. Then whenever I do print and cut projects, I always change the quality from standard to high. I always think it gives us a more pigmented, more dense colored print, and I always think that that is a good thing. So now I'll click OK, and that will take me back to the print dialog box. And once you have your paper loaded, you can go ahead and press the print button. In this tutorial, I'm going to be using the glossy clear sticker paper from Nito Labels. So all of the more detailed information such as print settings and cut settings are going to be based on this product. Now I'm sure that you could use other products and use some of these same skills. You may just want to double check your settings if you're using something other than this product. But I'll go ahead and link this sticker paper down in the description for you below in case you want to try it out yourself. I'll also put my DIY Alex coupon code down there so that you can save 25% at Nito Labels. Now, in order to load our glossy sticker paper into our printer, first we need to ensure that we are going to be printing on the correct side. So of course, the correct side would be the side that's super glossy. And for my printer, that means I need to set it with the glossy side facing up, but that may be different depending on the printer that you have. So just pay attention to the paper's orientation. Then when you put it in the printer, I need to confirm that I have the premium photo paper glossy. And once everything is confirmed, you can go back into Design Space and press print. Once your clear labels are finished printing on your printer, the next step is super important. The ink is still going to be wet when it comes off of the printer, so carefully take your label paper, set it away from your printer, and allow it to dry for at least 25 minutes. I recommend setting a timer to make sure that you don't accidentally touch your page and smear all of your ink. While that's drying, join me back in Cricut Design Space so I can show you how to create a custom cut setting specifically for the Nido Glossy Clear Sticker Paper so that you have the perfect cut setting on your Cricut machine. I always try projects myself before teaching you guys how to do them because I just feel like it makes me a better teacher and more informed about the best way to do things. And when I was working on making my own labels to test for this tutorial, I had a really hard time finding a cut setting that worked on my Cricut Explore 3 that worked well with this clear sticker paper. So what I'm going to do is teach you how to make your own cut setting for this specific material. But the beautiful thing about this process is that you can make a new cut setting for any material that you like. If you regularly struggle to cut something, you can create your own custom cut settings, and you can even take the current cut settings you have and actually tweak them. So let me show you how to do that. Keep in mind that we're beginning here on the material selection screen in Cricut Design Space. So we're at the last screen when you normally would cut your material. So we're going to go to the second section here and click the Browse All Materials button. And that's going to take us to this really long list. And I want you to go to the bottom left-hand corner and choose Material Settings. And when you do, you're going to see this really long list in alphabetical order pop up of materials, cut pressures, and all that good stuff. And what I want you to do is scroll all the way to the bottom of that list. And you'll see a button that says Add New Material. So you're going to click that first. And then you can name your new custom material. So typically, if it's material specific, I recommend that you have the brand in there as well. That way, if you ever come back and you decide to try a different brand of the same product, you know. So I'm going to call this Nido Clear, if I could type today, Nido Clear Labels. Actually, Nido Clear Printable Labels. That way, even if I come back a while later, I still remember what this product is. Then I'll click the green Save button. And then after you click Save, next you get to adjust your cut pressure. And after lots and lots of testing, I decided that the best cut pressure for my machine, my mat, and my material is 135. So it always defaults to 175. So I'm going to move this backwards until I get to 135. I think you might be able to type it in up here as well. Well, maybe not. But either way, you can go ahead and set your cut pressure here. Then you can set your settings to cut multiple times. So I wouldn't do that on this cut setting, but that is handy to know. And then if you have access to different tools, depending on the machine you're using, you can also choose that here in the drop-down menu. So then you're just going to click the green Save button to save your material. And now you can see my original cut setting here, and then here's the setting that I just created. So now I have a duplicate, but now you know what to do. Then it's really important that you scroll to the bottom of the list and you click the Done button. That way it kind of saves your cut setting. And then what I like to do after I've created a new cut setting is actually hit cancel, go out of my cut and cancel it, and then go back in. That way I know for sure that the setting is ready. Sometimes for me, it doesn't show up if I don't cancel it. Then the next thing we need to do is double check that our star mat is selected. So you don't want to select your print and cut mat just yet. Remember, we're going to use this star as our test cut. Now, I'm going to show you how to go over to our Cricut machines and take a look at this test cut. But before we leave the screen capture, I want to show you what to do if your test cut does not work and you need to come in and try another setting. So you can go in and you can actually edit your cut setting. I can show you how to do that real quick. You would click Browse All Materials again, and then Material Settings. You'd scroll down to where it is in the alphabetical list. And then you can select Edit right here, and then you can adjust the cut pressure. When you're adjusting cut pressure, I recommend that you go either about 10 points lower if you need less pressure, or 10 points higher if you need more pressure. And I recommend that you edit in increments of 10. So you can do that here by clicking the Edit button, and then of course you're going to click Done at the bottom again. And then what you need to do is ensure that that star mat is selected. Then choose Edit underneath your mat. And all you're gonna do is scoot your star over about 1 inch at a time. This allows you to put all of your test cuts very close together. And this is how we're just gonna use a little tiny bit of material at a time to double check on that cut setting. So I'll show you what a test cut is supposed to look like when we get to the next screen. I just wanted you to know what to do next in case your cut setting does not work. But now I need to go ahead and browse on materials and actually choose the cut setting. So in the search bar here at the top of the screen, I'm gonna type in Nito and then press enter. And you'll see that I have 2 different options for my cut setting. So I'll click on that and then press done. And now we'll hop over to my Explore 3 and I'll show you how to perform our test cut. So in order to double check and see if our test cut is going to work, first I'm gonna go ahead and put the full sheet of the clear glossy labels onto a light blue light grit mat. But keep in mind that the 25 minutes should have already passed so that the ink is completely dry because we're gonna use the same sheet for the test cut as well as for the print and cut so that we don't use extra materials. So I'm gonna begin by removing the clear cover sheet over top of my light grit mat. And then I wanna be sure to turn my print and cut sheet upside down so that I can line up the bottom left corner with the upper left-hand corner of my light grit mat. This is where we're gonna perform our test cut to make sure that it doesn't interfere with any of our labels, but also so that, again, we're not using a second sheet. Now, because these labels are clear, I do like to use my Cricut brayer tool when I'm rolling over top of this so that I'm not getting a bunch of handprints on top of the clear labels. So after the 25 minutes has passed, you should be good to go to roll your brayer over top of it. And once it's well stuck onto the mat, you can open up your machine and double, triple check that the star mat is selected in Design Space. And once you know that it is, you can put your mat underneath the rollers and insert the mat into your machine and see how your test cut does. Okay, so you're gonna begin by unloading your mat. And now we need to evaluate how our test cut actually looks. I know it's really hard to see on camera, but it is up there in the upper left-hand corner. So what I'm going to do is I like to use a pair of tweezers, and first we want to check how it cut. So we just want to see if the cut snagged anywhere, if there's any jagged edges around the outside of our cut. We should be able to lift it fairly easily using our pair of tweezers. And again, I know that's hard to see, but it did cut perfectly. There's no edges that got jagged or anything like that. But now there's one more step that we need to take when checking our test cut, and that is to see if the blade from the Cricut machine actually cut into the backing of the material itself. So take your weeding tool and kind of lift up the corner of your sheet and peel it back. And what you want to see is potentially a very light indentation on the background of your label paper, but you don't want to see it cut all the way through or cut super deep into the backing. So if it did cut all the way through the backing or super deep, then you want to go back into Design Space and start experimenting with turning your pressure down about 10 points and trying again. Or if it does look fine, then of course you can proceed using this cut setting. Or if it didn't cut all the way through, so there are snags in your original cut, then you'll want to go back into your cut setting and add about 10 points of pressure, just like I showed you by editing the mat. But now that we know that our cut setting is good to go, I'm going to gently flip over my mat and remove my paper from my mat. And I'm just gonna flip it around the other direction, because whenever you do print and cut projects, your machine is going to expect your registration marks to be aligned in the upper left-hand corner of that mat. So even though we do have the registration marks, we still wanna make it easier on our machine to find those registration marks. So I'm just gonna roll my brayer over everything again so that I don't get a bunch of fingerprints. And once you're good to go, you can insert your mat into your machine and let your machine do the print and cut process. I forgot to mention that after you do your test cut, you may have to go back to your computer or device and select your perfected cut setting again before starting print and cut. Once the print then cut process is complete, now we can apply our labels to our clear acrylic bins. I have found a method that I really like for doing this, so let me show you my favorite way. So the clear bins that I'm going to be using today, I bought from Amazon, and I use these to organize my craft room. I believe they come in sets of 2, so I will link them for you in the description in case you want to try the same ones as me. So since this is the side that faces out towards me, this is the side that I'm going to label. So I'm going to begin by cleaning off the front surface with a paper towel that has some rubbing alcohol on it, just to get any dust or dirt off of the surface before we add our labels, especially because I've had these bins for a while, so they actually have been sitting out in my craft room. They just haven't been labeled yet. So then I want to move quickly, so I'm just going to dry them off with a paper towel. And what I have found when I am applying these clear labels is that fingerprints are really, really obvious on them. So I like to just pick them up using my stab and grab tweezers from 143 Vinyl. I'm sure you can use any craft tweezers that you have on hand. So this is going to be my bin for infusible ink, pens, and markers. So what I'm going to do is start by peeling up one side of my label, and I'm going to grab it gently using my tweezers. And then once I have it, I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to pull it off the sheet using my tweezers. Then in order to center it on the other side, I'm going to grab a second pair of tweezers to hold the other side steady. And that way, I can gently place it on the front of my bin. And they are a little bit staticky, so you want to be careful that they might try to go down before you're ready. So center it the best that you can, and then just slowly lower it down. And once you have them stuck down, I'm okay with going over it with my fingers like this and just gently pushing them onto the surface. So here's what the front of my bin looks like with the label on it. And when I have items in it, it's a lot easier to read than when it stays clear. So now let me label the rest of my sublimation supplies, and I'll show you what all the labels look like. Have you tried making labels before using your Cricut? Let me know down in the comments below. Before we wrap up today, I want to give a shout out to my editor, Tyler, over at TubeEdits. He edited this video for me and pretty much all the videos you guys have seen for the past year and a half. So if you have any need for a video editor for social media videos, YouTube videos, or even digital courses, Tyler is definitely your guy. He even gave us an exclusive coupon code for the DIY Alex community. So if you decide to try out his services, you can save 25% off your first video using the code ALEX25. So if you want to reach out to him, I'll put all of his information right here on the screen and down in the description below. If you haven't already joined one of my crafty fams on Facebook, I would love to have you be a part of them. So I'll be sure to link both my groups down in the description. And if you've made it this far in the video, then I'd really love to get to know you on social media. So please be sure to find me at DIY Alex Vanover on pretty much all major social media platforms. And I'll be sure to link all of my profiles down in the description below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more just like it, then be sure to subscribe to the DIY Alex YouTube channel and be sure to ring the bell so that you get notified every single time that I put out a new video every single week. But don't wait for next week's video. Be sure to check out this one next. Or if you want to make your DIY dreams come true, be sure to check out this video. I know that you're going to love it.